Your sex drive's dead. Your emotions are running hot. And you're having more arguments than ever. Well, welcome to the menopause phase of marriage. Today I'm going to talk with you about this correlation, the correlation between menopause and the demise of marriages. And in fact, like 40 to 60-year-olds, women initiating divorce, that peaks in this menopause window. I'm addressing this because actually one of you listeners asked me to specifically, and as luck would have it, I've been through this myself. About 6-7 years ago, I went from what probably was a perimenopause phase to hitting that brick wall. I had to have a hysterectomy, and literally without warning, my husband was thrown into just this brave new world. It was like I was a teenager. I mean, we kind of expect it, right? We expect it with our teens. It's like, oh, you got your period. And in fact, let me just helpful hint to you. In no more way as a guy should you ask a woman, oh, are you upset because you're on your period? Should you be like, is this because you're hormonal, because of menopause? It's a bad plan. And I'll get into a little bit more as to, why that would be a bad plan and maybe what you can do differently. But the long and the short of it is, it's this major upheaval in our hormonal system. When we hit our teens, it's because we become able to reproduce. These hormones flood our bodies, cause us to want to have sex with one another, want to procreate. And as you know, anybody who's had kids, and I love my kids, but what comes with kids, the toil, the expense, especially brand new newlyweds. I have a son who got married last year, and he and his wife got a puppy a few weeks ago. And he said to me when he was visiting this past weekend, he was like, I don't understand remember what life was like before Grady came along. And this is a puppy. They've had this puppy for 6 weeks, but their life has been turned completely upside down. And that's what happens when we have children. Like, we want them, and they're a really great idea. And in fact, they are great, right? But there's a lot that goes into it, and it changes everything. It just changes everything. I've said, a number of different times, if we really knew what would entail, like not even, just in the having kids, but like what would happen during pregnancy, what impact that would have on our sex lives, we die out in a generation. So all those hormones flood in to make, the back end, the difficulty of it worth it. Like, it just, that pleasure, that drive for pleasure just overrides any potential downside. I like to call it a little bit of a unconscious incompetence. Like, it's good that we don't know what we're getting ourselves into before we come, smack into the conscious incompetence that comes when we actually have kids. But the same thing on the back end of that, like with the perimenopause and menopause phase, is where women in particular, our bodies are shutting down. That mechanism is shutting down. And what happens and I'm not a doctor, I'm not an expert on any of this. I actually am going to give you some resources for places you can go and look a little bit later in this episode, because I've had to do a lot of study about this because of my own personal experience around it. But what ends up happening is that perimenopause is where you're getting to the end of the line on being able to reproduce, and you get flooded with hormones. There's actually a big surge that'll happen when you first start, maybe in the first 3 to 5 years, where women actually want to have more sex before they can't have sex. And maybe it's that last Hail Mary of the body to go, hey, this is last chance, get out there and be fruitful and multiply. What ends up happening is that women will feel like they want to have additional sex. Sometimes this leads to extramarital affairs. Sometimes it leads to sort of an uptick with their spouse that eventually drops off. And it's confusing. Like, they want to have sex, but they're more emotional. And so they're more easily upset. And it kind of puts their spouse in a cognitive dissonant mood. I mean, I've seen a lot of people like commenting on the videos about how crazy their spouses are. Especially, there was a video I did on gray divorce where people were talking about just how nuts women get at this time. And, on the one hand, I would say because of the hormones, you're not wrong. They're going into this phase that is not normal. It's not the usual. For that reason, women are just, it's an up and down. What I think it's ultimately causing people to do, and I'm going to go back, I just pulled up some statistics, right? So like in the UK, women aged 40 to 60 initiate 60% of all divorces. So it's like in that specific window. It's a time frame that corresponds to the menopausal years. And then in a survey of 1,000 women involved in divorce, 73% reported that menopause played a role. That role it played is there's the mood swings, there's increased anxiety, there's depression, there's sleep problems. So what used to be like maybe didn't affect a woman begins to affect her. Like even sleeping in the same room with someone can become problematic, because women are having hot flashes or they're dysregulated in some way, and then they need light, or they wake up in the middle of the night and they're trapped in their bed and can't flip on the light, can't meet their needs, or they're disrupting their spouse's sleep by all of these things as well. Only about 1 in 3 women are offered HRT, and that's hormone replacement therapy. This is something that is due to a couple of different factors. One, nobody really thinks about it. Like there's a huge push right now around, education, menopause education. In particular, I'm going to pull this up because I want to make sure. There are a lot of influencers. There's a lot of people out there who are talking about menopause, but one who I have found like the most helpful is Dr. Mary Claire Haver. She wrote the book, The New Menopause, Navigating Your Path Through Hormonal Change with Purpose and Power, and with facts. So what she talks about is how women and their spouses need to become advocates, like with their doctors, because things that are happening in perimenopause, these things I've talked about, are being treated with things like antidepressants, or they're just being blown off. It's not a personality disorder. And I know for me, because I went and I had to have my uterus and both of my ovaries removed. What ended up happening is that my OBGYN did talk to me about hormone replacement immediately. And even when we were doing the HRT from the beginning, there was an up and down. Like I literally felt like a teenager. I got zits. I didn't even have zits when I was in high school, really. But I got zits. There were, I'm hungry, I'm not hungry. There was weight gain, there was weight loss. But honestly, the sleep disturbance was really the biggest thing. And just about anybody, can tell you that if you're not getting adequate sleep, that leads to cognitive issues, moodiness in and of itself. I don't know if you've ever done this, but I've gone with girlfriends, for instance, to, sleepovers. Like we've gone to like a church event or a business event, and you end up sharing a room with another person whose sleep patterns are different than yours, or who's snoring for the love of God. And you get a bad night's sleep. The next day you wake up and you're in a fog. You can't think straight. You're off your rhythm. And so just imagine that is happening, with a husband and wife in this area, but they don't have a context for it. It just seems like, all right, well, so he is sleep deprived, she's sleep deprived, she's moody, he doesn't know why. Men, just because of their protective nature or their tendency to own things, they think it's about them. So that's where I think we're getting a lot of this feedback from men. I can't do anything right. And we'll get into, I think, talking about that in probably another episode about that whole dynamic. But this is a real through sickness and health type of thing. And unfortunately, what we tend to do is we're not understanding what's going on inside of us biologically. And so we're looking at the irritating factors, on the outside. I've been a follower of this gal down in Florida. She called it the We Do Not Care Club. She's just on Facebook. She's hilarious, but it's a very deadpan type of thing. I have a pair of glasses, but I kid you not. Like lots of times I'll have a pair of glasses here, a pair of glasses here, and here too. And she puts these glasses on and has this sign that says, "We do not care." And it's a survival mechanism. So she just very deadpan starts to talk about we do not care. We do not care if we are wearing the same clothes for 2 days. Because we got to the point where it's like, all we really care about, we found something comfortable, it works, I'm wearing it. We do not care if we have on sweatshirt and leggings. I'm dressed for the day as well as for bed, and maybe tomorrow too. There's just things like that. And people on the outside are going, wow, you're just really letting yourself go. You just don't understand they don't understand. And most definitely their spouse is not necessarily understanding that, like, you're really uncomfortable. I mean, in a similar way, it's like people don't understand, especially in early pregnancy, right? How women are feeling nauseous. And the same stuff is happening. I can tell you, when I was on the HRT initially at first, like, certain smells, I just couldn't even be fine one day and then not fine. There's not the same predictable up and down, at least when it's on our period, or at least when we're pregnant. There's a calendar. Oh, you're in the first trimester. It makes total sense that everything makes you nauseous. You know, sometimes people don't get it as much, but when we start to show, there's an acceptance and understanding that, oh, you're really going through something here. But this is something that is real. Perimenopause and menopause is something very, very real. It is not a mood disorder. It is not a character defect. The reason I think this is most important is if I can identify what's going on with me, then I can address that at its root, right? So if the reason I'm upset, if the reason I'm touchy, if the reason I'm moody, and you're on my very last nerve is really because of me, then I can go and get help. The problem is if you're going to the wrong source, like if you go to a doctor who's not menopause informed, who's not HRT informed, who's not taking a holistic look at what's really going on, they can treat the wrong symptoms. They're not going to go to the core. They're not going to be taking a look at even some physical things that are going on and piecing it together. What too often happens, like I said, only about a third of people go and address the hormone issues. So what too often happens is we start to try to control or deal with our environmental stressors. That's part of that we do not care club. Like, we do not care if we do not answer the door when you just pop in. Oh, and by the way, don't just pop in. So we're trying to keep people at bay, keep them backed off from us. We try to shut down the other person. I mean, this is just a basic relationship tactic that doesn't work. Like when you hurt someone's feelings and, they're upset, and so you apologize to get them to stop being mad at you instead of really being sorry that they're hurting. The long and the short of it is that you don't answer to the viewer's question. And if you do want to put a question, or you want to just say, hey, suggest a topic, I'm happy to the extent I can address it. Is there a correlation between menopause and divorce? I would say absolutely yes, especially in this gray divorce zone, because you've got all those hormonal changes and you've been sticking with things for a long time. So maybe you think, hey, both of you think, hey, I've gotten through the rough patch, and, we're dealing with empty nesters, and now we can have some peace and we can have some fun, and bam, next thing you know, you're living with someone going through just the throes of sexual hormone roller coaster, and nobody's really expecting it. I'm telling you, expect it. And not only expect it, get informed about it, because the effort, the time, the expense that it will take to effectively deal with it, I promise you, is way less than what you're going to spend dealing with a divorce.